Welcome to another weekend here on the platform. My name is Sam Omashe. On the program this weekend, members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, popularly known as Shiites, have since 2015 been protesting the detention of their leader, Sheikh Ibrahim el-Zakzaky. But recent demonstrations by the group have been anything but peaceful. Some of the fatalities of these latest violent confrontations with security operatives in Abuja resulted in the deaths of DSP Umar of the Abuja Police Command and Channels TV reporter Precious Owolabi. The day after the incident, Shiites again clashed with security agents, and two persons paid the ultimate price in the ensuing chaos. Also, 54 days after he was sworn in for his second term, President Muhammadu Buhari finally put an end to the anticipation of Nigerians on his choice of ministers. 43 persons were selected across the 6 geopolitical zones, with former state governors, former senators, and 12 former ministers from the president's first term in office, making their way to the list. It was a smooth sail for many nominees who were not drilled, but asked to take a bow and leave. If confirmed by the Senate, they will form the Federal Executive Council, and Lagos State has no doubt had visionary leaders whose vision and thoughts have placed the state on the right path of development. One of such is Alhaji Lateef Kayode Jakande, popularly referred to as LKJ. He was the state's first democratically elected governor from October 1979 to December 1983. He recently clocked 90, and it was a celebration of a living legend. My column titled Eye in the Sky will be read to you shortly.
Professor Wale Soyinka may not think it, but he asserted a literary irony in his recent intervention on the problem of security in the land. He said the issue seems to have overwhelmed the president. In his famous poem Conceived When the Bandit Was Not Even Conceived, he wished travelers safe trips. The famous lines read, "You must set forth at dawn. I promise marvels of the holy hour." Anyone who travels across the country today knows there is no holy hour in Nigeria. The poet's prayer had the prophetic insight. Not all who read the poem would see the holy hour as pertaining to morning travels alone. In the Roman Catholic tradition, the holy hour refers often to the night. Some Anglican churches also observe this often at night. So, Soyinka's holy hour was in the morning. Others know it at night. Today, there is no holy hour for the traveler, so no marvels, except when by a miracle you arrive home without incident. The bandits have murdered sleep, so they don't spare the night travels. During the day, the traveler's eyes are alert like the owl's, but the owl does not see in the light, so the traveler looks but does not see until the marauders erupt for the kill, like the unfortunate case of Mrs. Olakunri, who was cut down around Ore. So we do not pine for holy hours until we destroy those who have murdered sleep. What we need is a strategy to deal with the problem. We can look to a recent past for one of the solutions. While the federal government's idea of sending soldiers to the highway looks reasonable, it is no more than a band-aid. It only stops them from attacking where the soldiers are within sight. I recall the days of Kashim Shettima as governor of Borno State and the birth of the civilian JTF. These civilian young men and women were recruited from the communities, and they knew who was a peacemaker and who was a militant. They began to flush them out and even engage them in fights. We can have the equivalents all over the country. They can be recruited and serve as intelligence gatherers for the police, the NSA, and other bigger structures of state. Secondly, it is a ready way to tackle youth unemployment. A place like Zamfara State could use such a structure. Again, the great weapon in all these is information. No war or crime busting is executed without the use of information. What we need in this instance is the technology of the drone. The drone is the weapon of the future. They are not manned, but they see what the human eye cannot see. They can also operate as stealth machines. They hover out of sight but see all. They are the modern-day eye in the sky. All we need is to buy and deploy them all over the forests of 1,000 demons in the country. Within hours, the drone would collect information and flash it to the Situation Room. Immediately, military action can be deployed. It could be a sortie from helicopter gunship, or if within striking distance, the soldiers can get there and dislodge or arrest the goons. The drones that can do these are not too expensive for a government that has spent so much on security with relatively little result. We need civilian JTFs to complement the drones. Until then, peace will be a pie in the sky.
Joining me to analyze these issues are two gentlemen. You have Jide Ologun. You're welcome to this program, Jide.
Thank you very much.
And Bosun Oshifora, welcome again.
My pleasure.
Both lawyers and public affairs analysts. Maybe we should start with the turbulent one first. Maybe they say sometimes if you have something to eat, you leave the sweet one for the last. Now, Jide, what do you make of all of these protests, the IMN protests in Abuja?
In human resources management, protest comes at the high end of agitations.
Yeah.
And this matter has been on. And the genesis of this current one is the clash between the Shiite group in 2015 December with the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff that led to killing of about 300 members, that eventually the arrest and incarceration of the leader, El-Zazaki, and the wife. And in these battles, he has lost about 6 children, and that tells us that he's passionate about his own position. And globally speaking, he is of the Shiite movement, which is in contrast with the Sunni. The Sunni constitutes about 85% of the Muslim community globally, and theirs about 25%. And he is someone who is loyal to the Iranian movement.
Course, yes.
In fact, he adopted the name Ayatollah. And of course, the Sunni are loyal to the Arabian Islam. And here we are, you know, the mindset for some of the Shia movement followers is the fact that we have religious intolerance, which we need to address. And of course, upon his incarceration, there has been a court pronouncement that he should be released on bail. But the president and the commander-in-chief, in his wisdom, once declared that the rule of law will be subject to national security interest. And here we have that playing. But then we have members who are desperate. I was worried when I heard them saying that they are ready to die. And of course, somebody asked the question, should they have protested or should it have been violent? And the question is, who determines whether a protest remains peaceful? There are agitations, and we can sit around the table and discuss about it. And worrisome for me is the fact that the international communities are showing interest. The Sunni and the Iranian government is saying, release him for us, he needs treatment. He lost his left eye, he's in critical condition reportedly. At the time the government presented him to downplay this aspect of health. And again, another indicting factor is the fact that we don't even have the medical facility to support his...
Even talking about medical facility, we have not even confirmed in any official way what is state of health.
Exactly.
Now they are saying this is an issue about rule of law. Now, how does rule of law conflict with national interest?
I think, first of all, it's more rules of engagement than even rule of law.
You have been political.
Because really, what I've seen here is poor man management on the part of this government. And admittedly, I must say that the president hasn't been good on this. There's so much chaos in the land. There's so much insecurity. There's so much violence. Now you see a sect, and this government has shown overtly that crisis management is not its forte. Because you have Boko Haram, you have the headsmen, you have kidnappings, you have all sorts of things.
Banditry.
But then you have those people who are ready to die. Like I said, it's all over. They're ready to die for this cause. I think at the end of the day, if this government goes back to engage these people, doing what they should have done first, so it's going to show war marksmanship on the part of this government, and something needs to be done. They need to be proactive, and they need to really start. I think they need to assemble a team and sit down and work out how this government really wants to go as far as this violence and chaos is concerned.
We have to understand, too, that the Shiite group, in spite of the fact that many people say that they are on the side of the law, at this moment, because El Zakzaky has not been released, they are not particularly popular in the northern part of the country. And is that what they are taking advantage of in government? Because a man like El Rufai has been spitting fire over the issue. He's spitting fire in Kaduna when the fire is blowing in Abuja, as though he has extended jurisdiction to the Federal Capital Territory.
Like I said, if you look at El Zakzaky himself, this movement started in the 70s when he was a student. In fact, at the time, he adopted the name Ayatollah, trying to promote the Iranian revolution concept in Nigeria. And surprisingly, he's been able to mobilize a level of followership.
It's charismatic.
And we need to recognize that. And of course, within the Muslim community, that is one position they are taking also, because in conflict resolution, you also consider perception management. That, okay, now, if this group were to be of the Sunnis, would you have exercised the same level of resistance you have exercised? Like he brilliantly mentioned, in crisis management, you can either be proactive or reactive. Eventually, we will resolve this matter. But at what cost? A whole DSP killed, precious oil, different casualties. I don't think we need this, particularly when we are engaging our resources to migrate from poverty to prosperity, from insecurity to security. We cannot afford to add this at all. And I expect that the federal government, even though the presidency denied that it's a matter for the judiciary, some of us know that that influence is connected.
The matter has blown beyond just the law. It is now about security. It is now about disenchantment about a particular group. And in another sense, the government seems to be shooting itself in the foot, because this is a group that has been identified as actually unorthodox in the way it pursues its own. They have hijacked a governor, they have murdered an emir, and so on. So they have done so many things that were clearly against the rule of law. It's an irony that they will be the one pushing the concept of the rule of law, and everybody will say, yes, they belong to the rule of law.
And the government is now
on the defensive side and say, no. This is the nature of impunity. So that is it. Now we have had 43 nominees for the position of the various positions of the Executive Council. What we have is that they have been mentioned, and that has become a kind of a character, that we are nominating you from your state before we take you for screening. So we are not screening you for the job you are about to do. We are screening you for the job that you might not do. Because from now, we don't know his Minister of Oil, we don't know his Minister of Interior Affairs, we don't know. Some people say, well, we know Attorney General. Well, maybe. Some people say, well, maybe. Okay, for instance, Fashola, is he going to take the 3 portfolio? Is he going to come back to 1? I mean, we should, when you announce things like this, shouldn't you say, well, this is the cabinet, this is who is going here, this is who is going here. So when you go there in front of the National Assembly, so if you are going to be in charge of security, for instance, then we want to know how much you know about it and how prepared you are.
You know, like you mentioned, there are several angles to this. So perhaps if it's basically political, there may not be a need to bring in the portfolios. All right. But if it's about achieving a vision, leadership vision, then that becomes critical because by virtue of the Peter Drucker management by objectives, you expect that SMART goals be set, which are specific, measurable, attainable, time-bound, and somebody has to take responsibility. And you look at the ministers; they are to supervise the ministries. The ministries are outlets of delivering dividends of services to the people. And the permanent secretary heads the ministry. So these are existing organs. The ministers are just to come, they are political appointees to ensure that the job is done. And if you consult, the vision and mission statements are there. For example, the Ministry of Power has a mandate to energize the economy by providing electricity in the country. The housing, according to Section 16 of the 1990 Constitution as amended, has to provide adequate and affordable housing for the people. So the assignments are there. But going through antecedents, have we really focused on what should be done? Or is it a compensatory exercise? Because some have grouped it into the politicians that failed in winning some elections, because some are also bothered that you were a governor, you are rushing back to be minister, you were in the Senate, you didn't win, you are coming back to be, so is it about moving the nation forward, even though they quickly tell us that it's about
moving individuals forward.
Exactly, and their political career ambitions.
Now that we have this kind of situation, didn't you think that the whole idea of screening itself was kind of a theater of the absurd?
The screening is the saddest part of the whole thing. One, because for me, I think before we came in, we were talking about this, and I'm like, you have ministers that are coming in.
Yeah.
They've been there for 4 years. At least that's a good point for them to come and show their scorecard.
Yeah.
I mean, he just talked about the Minister for Education. It was under the same man that history was cancelled in the curriculum. I've never seen that in my life. Who cancels history from a school
Well,
curriculum?
they said they have restored it. And I think that we need to take this issue of the study of history very seriously because it has to be made compulsory up to a certain level.
Exactly.
Because I am a graduate of history, and it has to be compulsory until you get to maybe GS3 or SS1, something like that, then before you branch out. So if you like it, because even the universities now, you don't have history departments, you have history and strategic studies and things like that.
May I request that you use your influence to extend it beyond that?
Yeah.
You talk about American citizenship. Even those who are given the lottery, whatever, they are made to study and get acquainted with the history of America, because that is the fountain of patriotism.
Yeah.
So a people that lose touch with their history may not project so well into the future.
Yeah. Now let's talking about heroes. Lateef Kayode Jakande turned 90. He's not the energetic 40-something-year-old that we used to know, who did a lot. So talk about his legacy.
First of all, education.
Yeah.
He keyed in so well into the Western region, Awolowo, educational design, and at least if anything stands out for Jakande, we all have the Jakande schools.
Yeah.
We still remember some of them still exist, though dilapidated now because a lot of governors who came after him didn't follow up. Then we had housing. Jakande stands out as the only person who
You
made
forget to say,
affordable
before
housing.
you go to housing, you forget to say that Jakande met the shift system. I attended the shift system. I used to go to the afternoon school system, afternoon school and so on. But he said this was not healthy. Everybody should go to school in the morning. So he built so many schools at that time. People said, oh, what kind of school is this? Cowshed. That's what they called it. His political opponents said
but it was where all of us went. And at least today, I think we're better off than those who are in the mansions.
Yes.
So then there's affordable housing. Yes. There's been so much housing policies over the years, but nobody has been able to achieve that feat.
But the number of houses, as the vice president himself said that day, that nobody has built as many housing units, whether federal or state, since Jakande.
And apart from that, it was affordable.
Yes, it was affordable.
In fact, that's the key for me, because you find that now there are a lot of houses being built by states and by the federal government, but nobody can assess them. In fact, the process of assessing in some states, let me not go specific, it's very cumbersome. Talk less of even paying for it. But then you had teachers, civil servants who pay. People still, there's Ikmori is there for us to see. So many places, Lagos Island, almost everywhere had the Jakande input, and you could feel it. In fact, his name is still there, Jakande Housing Estate, Jakande School, Jakande this, Jakande that. But look at how many governors have come after Jakande. You can point at something that these governors,
they are
nothing. Maybe apart from Mara's Keke.
I don't know whether anybody wants to be remembered for Keke. What else you want to say about it? He did a lot of things to open the Keke corridor.
This is a man that has enjoyed comprehensive success. In his chosen profession, journalism, he excelled. In politics, he excelled. In governance, he excelled.
He was editor of Tribune.
I'm sitting here. I lived in one of the low-cost housing estates as a young Nigerian in Lagos, the Abeson Estate.
Okay, I remember that.
Exactly. And this is a man who made health facilities available in all the zones in Lagos. This is a man that demonstrated the definition of democracy. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. He brought governance to the people, not away from the people. And he really mobilized. I mean, you can imagine from 1979 to 1983, he did so much that today we can talk about legacy. And I think that is important.
Yes, because I winding up.
That's important.
We should not also forget that he came with the metro line that Buhari scuppered and has apologized for. So he saw the transport and communication problem in Lagos ahead of so many people. Well, there is a snag. There's a snag that we have to talk about very briefly before we go. And it has to do with the politics. Jakande was part of the Abacha government, and it was agreed by the progressives at that time. Abiola, if you read the Segun Oshoba's book, he related how Abiola, when they held meetings, they said, look, all of these people are relying on me too much, becoming a strain on my finances. Maybe if they go and join the government, everybody who wants to join should join. Well, the point though was that when it was time to do the fight, himself, Ebino Topsy, and one other, Ulo Onogurua, were not found. And that has haunted him. So he may be a genius of development. That thing cost him a lot of political heft in terms of the moral and inspirational power of a leader.
Absolutely, but that's not enough to erase his legacy.
Yeah, but what legacy? Nobody talks about him as, he did a lot. He died, he was in prison with Awo, he did all of that. And then when it was time to fight, he was on the other side. But it seems to have been forgiven to the extent that nobody wants to talk about that, because it looks like we are leaving it for history. We are leaving it for history to say it, because history will not forget it, because people like Ebino Topsy and Onogurua, the judgment have come swiftly. But his own is probably waiting. Something about him waiting. But he has seen that he has not been able to exercise leadership among the Southwest political leaders. He doesn't attend, nobody evokes his presence, and so on.
I just want to say this, that in politics, 2 + 2 may not always be 4. And we can give the advantage of regional politics and national politics. And when you are invited to play at the national level, there are a lot of intrigues and issues there that may stain your beautiful color. So, but having said that, I think his general legacy will make way for a pardon.
Yes, to conclude, I conclude this issue by what the governor of Lagos State said at that time, standing beside him. He said, look, when you were governor, I was 14 years old. It's just like, look at me now. Yes. It is because of some of the things you did that I am here. You know, that sort of thing. So it's a fitting legacy to a man of great honor.
And above all, he has added 20 years to the 70 years that he's
yes. And it's still
really
kicking.
Congratulate him.
Yes, congratulate him. So thank you, gentlemen, for being on this show.
Yeah.
Just before the program ends, this is my poem. I usually come out, I have a poem on Leah Sharubu, who has been in detention for a long time now. So I do a poem every week in her honor. How fragile can you be now if we who claim to walk the streets cannot eat without thoughts of bullets or sleep until we mourn those who died without offense? We crawl before laws like lepers. No one abducted us, but we seek freedom like those in chains, like you. Thank you for watching the program today. You can catch up with my published column on www.samomashe.com. Also follow me on Twitter. My handle is @samomashe. And until next time, be good.